Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of DEC Does What? I'm your host, Sean Mahar, along with.
Erica Ringewald.
And we're excited to be talking about the Great Lakes today with our Great Lakes Program Director, Shannon Dougherty. This is going to be an awesome episode. But
It is.
you know what makes the Great Lakes great?
There are many things, Sean.
Yeah, but the most important one, Erica, is that's actually where you and I met.
Truth.
Not necessarily
True story.
on the Great Lakes itself, but where did we meet doing Great Lakes work?
So we were both part of an effort called the Healing Our Waters Coalition. It was sort of
Mhm.
a regional collaboration among a lot of different groups who were advancing Great Lakes restoration initiatives. I was living in Chicago at the time, and the public interest PR firm I worked for was developing sort of the graphics that were related to that and the messaging and sort of helping coordinate the campaign.
It was really awesome, and it was really, well, one,
So long ago.
so long ago. It was great to get to know you, but actually learn from you. And I've learned so much from you over the years, Erica. But really, that start was really what inspired me to do a lot more communications work. And hearing from an expert from you and learning from you was awesome. And that's why I'm glad the Great Lakes have brought us together.
Yes, same.
But when you talk about Great Lakes restoration, too, a lot of what we started is now actually playing out in real time. And
I
that's
know,
why
it's
it's so
crazy.
great to have Shannon on the show today to really talk about all the hard work we've made her do over the years and what's going on. So, Shannon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you. So, Shannon, I guess, what makes the Great Lakes great?
Oh, so many things. Where do I start? I'll start with the most obvious point here, right? That this is the largest freshwater ecosystem in the entire world. And really just reflect on that and what that means. So much of our freshwater, the majority of our freshwater, is locked up in groundwater, in ice caps, in glaciers. And we have 21% of it flowing through New York State's backyard, through Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, Niagara River, St. Lawrence River. And it provides us with so many things: drinking water, recreation, wildlife habitat, fishery, hydropower, navigation. I mean, the list goes on. It's just such an incredible resource, and so happy to be a part of this program to work towards protecting it.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Definitely. So, how big is your Great Lakes program here in the state?
Currently, we are up to 14. We have a team of 14 interdisciplinary staff. We are based throughout 3 different DEC regions currently and central office. And, have really been working as a team, as a fully formed team since 2011, when we first received our initial allotment of Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funding that provides crucial capacity support for the program and a lot of the work that we do here in New York State.
So, Sean and I, as you heard our origin story, met long ago. Would you say that restoration efforts have changed over the last, dare I say, 2 decades plus? Wow, 2 decades plus. Or have they largely stayed about the same?
I mean, I think as with the science, our approach continues to evolve and is informed by new approaches, new models, new ideas, and new information. So my story began in 2011. So I can't go back 20 years, but I'll go back 13 and say that, since the start of the program, we have continued to evolve. We are moving towards taking less of a piecemeal approach to how we do restoration work to more of a ecosystem scale or ecosystem based approach. So really looking for opportunities, whether it's across our watersheds, our shorelines, to take a comprehensive approach in identifying multiple projects that are really going to work together to help us meet our restoration and protection goals for Great Lakes.
So, how do we organize ourselves in order to effectuate that? And do we have like an action plan that we've produced?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. We sure do. We have the New York State Great Lakes Action Agenda. That is our guiding document for all the work that we do here in New York State. It's a plan that has, really a lot has gone into it in terms of stakeholder input, input from our state agency partners, and hundreds of organizations throughout the state's watershed. It's an ecosystem based plan, so it's fairly broad. So there's things in there that pertain not only to water quality and habitat, but also building sustainable, resilient communities. We recognize that humans are a part of the ecosystem, right? Seems pretty obvious. But when we get down to the nitty-gritty of it and really need to plan and implement the projects, it's absolutely critical that we integrate them in our approach and think about the social, the economic benefits that restoration projects can generate and what these truly can mean to local communities.
Can you share an example of what you would consider a success story?
Absolutely. I'll share one. It's kind of tip of my tongue here, coming off of our big announcement with the Rochester area of concern delisting. One of the large restoration projects that we have been successful in and has really been a model for other Great Lakes states throughout the larger basin has been the restoration of the Braddock Bay Wildlife Management Area. So this was a embayment on Lake Ontario, located just west of Rochester. It's protected, or it was historically protected, by a natural sand barrier bar that eroded over time, likely due to the impacts of shoreline armoring and reduced sediment supply that was nourishing that barrier bar. And over time, it in turn had impacts on the wetland itself. And so we lost, wetland area, diversity of species, and of course, with that, the wildlife that depend on them. And so it was a true partnership effort working with many different federal agencies, local, county, to really work to restore the wetland, remove invasive species, and importantly, restore or mimic the function that that natural barrier bar had provided to protect those coastal wetlands. And of course, by protecting the wetlands, which, the project is successful from a habitat perspective, we're also preventing significant impacts from storm-driven waves that would otherwise impact properties within that area. And also, assisting with restoring the flow of sediment along the shoreline so that it can then build beaches downdrift and protect those properties. And so it's a one of those win-win-win projects that we try to pursue.
Amazing.
What was more amazing, Erica, was when we were at the event recently and, really celebrating this milestone behind us. All of a sudden, so I'm at the podium and I'm speaking and, saying all these really passionate things, and everyone in the audience has their cameras out. And I'm like, oh, wow, they must really like what I'm saying. And then apparently, after the fact, there was a waterspout tornado flying by in the lake behind
Really?
me. And that's really what everyone was looking at. They didn't care what I was saying.
Pics or it didn't happen.
Oh, we've got them. Don't worry. We'll show you later. Maybe post some in the show notes as well so you can see it. It's a pretty awesome experience. But Shannon, that is a really good project too because it was years in the making. And, we have these areas of concern around the Great Lakes. Eric and I, when we got our start, we're always trying to put the focus and attention on delisting these. We did have the Oswego River delisted in New York, one of the first ones in the Great Lakes Basin to be delisted. And it was awesome to finally turn this milestone on this project. And it was a testament really to the hard work that our teams really had to do to really, on multiple different fronts, really manage the ecosystem restoration components and really, celebrate this great success. So kudos, Shannon. It was a great story to hear.
Thank you. It's a win for all of us.
You talked a little bit about shoreline armoring. Can you, sort of in layman's terms, explain why sort of nature based shoreline protection is a better choice in terms of ecological health and actually public safety?
Absolutely. So, our land water interface areas are some of our most biologically rich areas, important to habitats. These are areas where we also recreate, of course, where we want to access the water. When we have excessive shoreline armoring, that prevents or inhibits many of those activities. And so right now there's a movement towards really advancing the practice of nature-based approaches that essentially work to mimic the natural function and processes of a shoreline. Sometimes there's gray elements combined, riprap with plantings. Other times it's completely green. But really, it's about working with nature to provide those multiple benefits rather than working against nature. Because when we have to armor success excessively, it ultimately will have impacts not just at that site, but also downstream or downdrift. Everything that we do, I mean, it's an ecosystem, everything's connected. So, we're looking at approaches that include things like constructing coastal wetlands where that's appropriate, grading and planting stream banks to sustain that long-rooted native vegetation that helps hold the bank and the soil together to prevent erosion. Looking at replenishing beaches and dunes along our shorelines, these are natural protective functions. They're providing us with free benefits in terms of flooding and erosion protection. And again, when we overly modify the ecosystem, it results in a reduction of those benefits.
So I know one of the programs that we have in New York is what we affectionately term the READY initiative, or REDI, Resiliency Economic Development Initiative. Can you explain how that is working to effectuate some of these natural and nature-based features on the landscape?
Yeah, the ones that and that was a wonderful program, really came into play after the high water events of 2019, where many of our coastal communities experienced significant high water conditions and flooding impacts as a result. And so, the great thing about that program is that it was locally driven. And so it really brought communities, counties, officials to the table to identify what their key needs were and ultimately how those could be mitigated or restored in some way. And so, as a part of that, there was a subset of projects that really did focus on the restoration of natural features. And those, again, um, Lake Ontario is unique in that it's riddled with these erosive bluffs. Think picturesque chimney bluffs, right? And these bluff wetland complexes that are often and the wetland complexes being protected by the barrier bar, which is kind of an indication of the natural sediment movement. And so, several of the projects really focused on restoring again those barrier bars, similar to the successful model that we had experienced with Braddock Bay.
So another acronym that we hear a lot about is the GLRI, or the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, which is really the federal government working with the states to really put resources to work to really restore the health of the Great Lakes. I know we've got the Great Lakes Action Agenda in New York, but how are we working with our counterparts throughout the Great Lakes and the federal government to really implement the GLRI, and how are we doing on that in New York?
Yeah, this shows up for us in a few different ways. Two of the major programs that are supported by GLRI funding within New York State are our Areas of Concern program. So we currently have four now with the delisting of the Rochester embayment. These are essentially legacy hotspots of contamination where various impairments have been identified, and we're working towards assessing those, monitoring environmental conditions, ultimately implementing restoration and remediation projects to restore those uses. And then we have the lake-wide action and management plans. So this is the actual lake itself. And we have these LAMPs, or lake-wide action management plans, that really are ecosystem-based plans for the lakes. So what's happening in the lakes in terms of nutrients, food webs, contaminants of concern, and they provide a mechanism for us to work directly with other state partners and with Canada in coordinating activities that will ultimately, keep our lakes clean and help restore them.
So cool. How would you say the lakes are doing overall?
So, as you might have suspected, that's a loaded question. There's many different indicators of ecological health that we could look at, but generally speaking, I would say they're doing okay. Lake Erie is the smallest and shallowest lake, and so it's ringed by urbanization and agriculture. So in that regard, we have some issues, with nutrient loading, especially in the Western Basin, where the Maumee River from Ohio drains. That's where we've had some of the, high visibility issues with harmful algal blooms and contamination of drinking water systems. We're not experiencing that in New York, and the Eastern Basin of Lake Erie is quite different. So, that is a persistent issue. I think both lakes are also impacted by climate change, and will be more so in the future. This can intensify erosion and flooding events, of course. Science right now is saying that one of the things we might expect is that the lakes will have higher highs and lower lows than what we've already experienced.
It's like parenting.
Exactly, yes. And that will have more rapid fluctuations between those two conditions. So less time to adjust, if you will. But in the same respect, there's success stories, right? I mean, we've had a ton of effort and funding that's gone into habitat restoration, and we're starting to see this show up in surprising ways. Um, Back in 2021, our Lake Erie unit documented the first evidence of lake trout fry. You know,
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, spawning, successful reproduction, essentially, right, taking place off of our New York's Lake Erie shoreline. Also, a spawning adult sturgeon in the Genesee River as well a few years back. And so, this is an absolute win and really an indication, I think, of the collective efforts that have gone into restoring the lakes over many, many years and will continue.
So Shannon, obviously we think Great Lakes, we think water, but you've talked a lot about habitat and birds, and I think listeners should know. Full disclosure: we both got our start working for the birds in the Audubon Society. Different coasts, obviously, but the Audubon connection.
I didn't know that about Shannon, but now I do.
Welcome, yes, birders unite, as they say. But one of my favorite success stories too is actually playing out in real time now, and it's the return of the Great Lakes piping plovers to New York. How are our plovers doing up on Lake Ontario?
Ooh, good question. I know we've had a pair or two on eastern Lake Ontario's shoreline. I don't have up-to-date information in terms of how they did last season. Um, it's interesting though, because that comeback and return of the piping plovers is somewhat related to the way that we are managing our shoreline and our sediment and sand resources. And so parks and DEC have done a lot of work studying the sediment and sand dynamics in eastern Lake Ontario and have identified various areas for placement of this material as they need to dredge it out to, facilitate boats moving in and out of Sandy Pond and so forth. And, I think that that's contributed and kind of another example, right, of taking an ecosystem-based approach and looking at all the parts and pieces and how they come together and what the impacts can be and hopefully, it continues to be a success story with, breeding pairs of piping plovers.
Definitely. So, and staying on the ecosystem-based approach and species, I know one of the big topics in the Great Lakes is aquatic invasive species and the spread of invasives. And, the Great Lakes being a hub of international commerce, over time has really, been one of the major pathways for aquatic invasive species introductions here. What are some of the species that we're concerned about? What are we managing for? And what's on the horizon that we should keep our eyes out for?
Yeah, great question. Another loaded question. I think when we're thinking about threats and stressors to the lakes, aquatic invasive species is absolutely on the top of the list. Ever since the arrival of invasive mussels, right, with the zebra mussels and now quagga mussels, they're impacting all kinds of things within the lakes. They're impacting food webs. They're impacting nutrient flows within the lakes, and really having some cascading effects. We've seen, sea lamprey. That's somewhat of a success story in that we've had, recurrent treatments of lampricides that have, kind of slowly started to kind of reduce those populations. And again, that's linked, I think, to the some of this comeback we're seeing with the lake trout as well. So, it's quite variable. Invasive species continue to be a significant issue. There's efforts of all kinds taking place, whether it's cleaning, draining, or drying. And I hope I got that right. It's a mouthful.
Nicely done.
You clearly listen to our
Yeah,
podcasts.
really being front line stewards in our everyday activities to some of the negotiations and regulations that are being passed regarding ballast water treatment. Many of these species are brought into the lakes in ballast water within ships, and then from there move around the Great Lakes and continue to spread. So again, at all levels, all species. Each one has a different story and, a different control mechanism, if you will.
And I know my favorite one that we're working to control across the basin is the Asian carp. So I do have to ask, have you ever been hit in the head by an Asian carp when you've been boating anywhere?
No, but I would love to, I don't even know what it's called, the spear fishing that they do down in the Mississippi. I would love to give that a try someday. I cannot say I have been hit in the head yet, but,
Erica, you look confused. Have you not seen the videos of Asian carp like
I
jumping
look
out of
at
the water?
TikTok. I see what's out there.
thankfully not in the Great Lakes, we hope. Yep.
Well, you are going to be on the front lines of keeping them out. So we
That's right.
wish you well in that endeavor.
I grew up on the shores of Lake Michigan, so I have to say apologies to Lakes Erie and Ontario. Lake Michigan is my favorite lake. Sorry, and so that experience sort of inspired my interest in the lakes. Shannon, can you tell me sort of your origin story of why you kind of this became your focus professionally?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Despite growing up in a house with two environmentalist parents and living out in the country, in the middle of the woods, hiking all the time, down by the river, playing in the creek, I still didn't have it and still didn't pursue the water track until I you know, got to my undergrad degree, took an environmental issues course, and was really kind of inspired with all of the information and really learning about natural resources management and the equitability of it all, and a lot of the environmental justice and social injustice issues around decisions that impact our environment. And furthermore, had the opportunity to do a service learning summer in Tanzania in a very water scarce area where communities dealt with water scarcity, limitations to access every single day. There was not running water within the houses, and this was just a reality. And, I think having that experience and really seeing firsthand what many millions of people around the world are dealing with now in terms of limits to water access and scarcity and drought, and sometimes conflict as a result of that, uh, really inspired me to pursue the water track. And I couldn't be happier to have ended up here. It's at DEC.
So, Erica, growing up on the Great Lakes,
Yeah.
did you actually think of New York as a Great Lakes state?
I didn't. I
Right.
absolutely didn't, and, my parents are from Long Island. We came back and forth to New York quite a bit, but I didn't think of New York as being a Great Lakes state the way I did, Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois. There's didn't
I know all you
not my radar.
Midwesterners. Uh,
Corn-fed, sorry.
yeah, but you always view us as the lower lakes anyway and the lesser lakes. But,
Yeah,
it's
you're always number 1 with
amazing.
me.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because, we have two Great Lakes. We're one of the only states that have that. And we have the mighty St. Lawrence River as well. Amazing system. And I think people forget 750 miles of shoreline along New York's coast here. We're talking 42% of New York drains into the Great Lakes Basin. Like, New York is a true Great Lakes state, but people really do forget about it overall. And we're glad that you're here, Shannon, to help remind them of that and help really make sure that we're stewarding this really critical resource that is so important to our freshwater future overall. Now, I do have one other question though, and this came from my daughter, who is a passionate, avid listener of this podcast. What is the
1 of
biggest
2,
Yes,
Shannon.
exactly. The other being my mom. Um, what is the biggest fish in the Great Lakes?
Oh, I'm gonna go with Lake Sturgeon.
The sturgeon. All right.
Uh,
I'll have to tell her that. She'll be excited to hear that. So Shannon, thanks for coming on the show today. This is great to, dive in deep a little bit more on the Great Lakes. I
So
think we
he
only
can't
did
help himself.
Oh, we only did touch the surface there. But imagine
God.
we could go so much deeper. And maybe we'll have you back on to talk more about it because there's clearly a lot of work going on. You and your staff are doing an amazing job. Kudos to you for the Great Lakes Coastal Symposium that we recently hosted here in New York, bringing hundreds of Great Lakes researchers and practitioners here to New York to really celebrate all the accomplishments that you're helping to facilitate. And it was an awesome opportunity. So thanks for being on the show today. Thanks for talking about the Great Lakes, and we'll let you get back to keeping them great.
And thanks for being part of DEC.
Yes.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Wow, Erica, that was a great episode with Shannon Dougherty on the Great Lakes and all the important work we have going on up there.
Indeed it
I
was.
know she's such an awesome all-star and has a really great team behind her. And well, now our listeners know a little bit more about you and I too and our history on the Great Lakes.
And the Great Lakes have a special place in our heart. And I'm not going to give it away, but you're getting a special Great Lakes themed holiday gift.
Oh, am I really?
Indeed, you are.
Oh boy, here we go. It has been an awesome year. We started this podcast in 2024, which was great, and appreciate everyone listening. But we're really looking to start the new year off right. So, Erica, what are some of the things going on in the new year people should be aware of?
Well, a great way to start the year off, 2025, is to participate in one of our first day hikes. Um, we do this every year, and it's a great way to get offline and get outside, as the governor says. And it's also an affordable way to get outside. So, New Year's Day, join us on a first day hike at one of many events that we are holding across the state and the nation. This isn't just in New York. But here in New York, DEC, our partners at state parks and Canal Corporation are inviting all New Yorkers to kick off the year by participating in one of many hikes being held at state parks, historic sites, wildlife areas, trails, and public lands across the Empire State. So sign up for an event near you if you'd like to join us with your family and friends. Just search First Day Hikes at dec.ny.gov.
It really is a great way to kick off the new year, getting outside, checking out all the wonderful winter weather that we have. We'll hopefully have winter weather at that point in time. But it's a great opportunity just to do something different with the family on the first day of the year and really just, again, celebrate all the great natural resources we have here in the state.
Just as a special note, because it is winter, we do encourage folks before they get outside to check out our winter hiking tips. Safety and being prepared are critical, no matter what your physical ability or where you're going. So it's really essential for to have the most enjoyable and safe experience. So you can learn about what to wear, what to pack, and so much more by searching for winter hiking safety, also at dec.ny.gov.
And also on our social media pages as well, we're putting out a lot of information on winter safety, not just from hiking, but also ice safety awareness as well.
Yep.
It's a time of year to really be more attuned to what's happening in the outdoors when you're out there and also plan ahead and plan accordingly for the winter conditions that you'll see. Some folks have probably seen the Allen Mountain search that was going on for a hiker in the wilderness that has got lost. Our crews are out there searching, but it is some of the most dangerous conditions that we have in the state here. And it's an important time of year for everyone to make sure you're planning ahead, planning accordingly with your gear, but also traveling with a companion. Don't go off into the woods alone this time of year. Really make sure you've got the buddy system in place and you are taking your steps to be prepared for whatever Mother Nature may throw out at you when you're out there.
Yep.
So Erica, now's the time of year. Obviously, we're thinking about colder weather, but we've got some stuff in the warmer months coming up. And what's new in the world of our campgrounds?
Yeah, looking ahead to the spring and summer, we are looking for volunteer campground ambassadors. It's never a bad time to start thinking about the warmer months. So, we're encouraging folks to volunteer time at any of DEC's many beautiful campgrounds. And we just opened the 2025 application period for the campground ambassador program, which connects more New Yorkers with the outdoors. DEC's campground ambassadors work with campground staff to welcome and assist millions of visitors who vacation in the Adirondack and Catskill parks every year. Ambassadors conduct environmentally themed activities and lead other programs to help enrich the camping experience for all of our visitors. So, we are encouraging New Yorkers who are passionate about camping and the outdoors to help us introduce new campers to DEC facilities and other outdoor activities. Typically, ambassadors serve 2 weeks during DEC's core camping season, which in the Adirondacks and the Catskills is July through Labor Day. And in consideration for volunteer service provided, we provide a campsite to the ambassadors for the duration of their stay. So applications are due by January 10th.
This is really a great opportunity to, one, get some firsthand experience to engaging New Yorkers and potentially open pathways up to careers here at DEC. But it's also a rewarding experience to help inspire more people to get outside and enjoy nature and recreate responsibly. And our
Absolutely.
ambassadors are really on the front lines of that. So it's a really neat program. Definitely encourage folks to check it out. Obviously, the camping, free camping time is helpful as well, but it really is more than that, and it's so critical to what we're trying to do to engage New Yorkers and welcome them to the great outdoors here in New York State.
Yep.
So check out that program. Check out more of the news of notes at dec.ny.gov. Keep writing us here at contact@dec.ny.gov to let us know what more you want to hear about on this show. Definitely, I hope you all have a great holiday season and look forward to getting the new year started off right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Erica, we almost forgot though. What's the biggest thing people can do?
Get outside.
DEC Does What is a production of DEC's Division of Communication, Education, and Engagement. Our theme music is an original composition by Mike Menza, wildlife technician with DEC's Division of Fish and Wildlife. Like what you heard on this episode? Please leave a review and share this episode with others. Want to learn more about DEC's wide-ranging efforts to protect New Yorkers and the environment? Visit dec.ny.gov or connect with us on social media. You can find us using @NYSDEC. For more information on DEC Does What, visit dec.ny.gov/podcast.